Welcome to And It's Live, the podcast which dives deep into football's most iconic seasons, stories, and what ifs. If you love football, history, tactics, and nostalgia, make sure to subscribe, hit the bell, and drop us a like on YouTube so you don't miss an episode. Hello and welcome to part 4, the first 4-parter we've had on the main event. This is 07-08 in the Champions League. I'm Martin in the chair. It's the semi-finals and the final. Very, very English affair this week. How are we doing, Adam?
Very good, thank you. Yeah, it's, if nothing, you think of this five or 6 years ago on these shows, if we were saying that we would have 3 English teams at this stage, I think we'd all have laughed, even with Liverpool doing as well as they did. So it shows how things have changed. It was only at that point we were saying that Serie A was a dominant force, but how quickly it all changes.
David, how are we doing?
I'm good, thank you, mate. Yes, the only thing more crazy than 4 shows to cover a season would be doing all 4 of those shows on the same night. What sort of madmen would attempt that? And luckily, of course, we record them week by week and in totally different clothes and haven't stared at each other for 3 hours. But no, delighted to be on. Yeah, Adam's right. This is the sea change. This is the English sides. The league, they'd been boasting about it for a long time. This is when they moved it from most exciting to best league in the world. And they were able to do so because their sides were rampaging all over Europe.
Indeed they were, and of course we're recording in 2025 now and all that. Yeah, it's the future. It's the future. Let's start then with United and Barcelona. A very different approach, Adam, from Ferguson in the new camp. Talked about David. David mentioned that point. The Premier League moving from exciting, entertaining to best. This is a grown-up performance from United.
Yeah, I think so. Maturity there. I think we've said before, the tactical shift in him from the early seasons that we covered here. I think you can see that with some of the teams here. I don't doubt he's stifled a couple of players in these games. Wayne Rooney, for example, we mentioned being played out of position. I think when you go through this is classed as a professional performance, and it certainly was. There's a great quote from Ronaldo. He felt like he should have had a penalty, a second penalty, I think, and he said no problem. What was it he said? I didn't score, no problem. Now I'm going to score in Manchester, and I think that sort of sums up him at this point, and that sea change in where he is, that early penalty that he missed, and he comes back and he thinks he should have another one, and he still wants to keep going, and he says, I'm going to score in Manchester. He doesn't score in Manchester. It's another player who does, who we're going to shine a light on, Paul Scholes. But yeah, I think grown up is the word for it. Everyone doing their job, well drilled, well disciplined. Barcelona certainly aren't going to take them to the cleaners. Everyone is aware of what needs to happen. Even Barcelona didn't even play that badly in this game at the new camp, I don't think. So they might have thought they could get to the Old Trafford and try and win. But yeah, United were just too strong on the night, which is very rare at this point that you would say that about United against one of the best teams in Europe. But yeah.
Tactically disciplined in Spain, David, but no away goal. A lot of risk back at Old Trafford. The big tifo that said believe, and there was a charge that night. There had to be a charge that night. It was going to be a classic European semi-final. I mean, 2 very, very good sets of players.
Yeah, with a one-off game, absolutely. United, don't forget, without Nemanja Vidic and Wayne Rooney. So these are big players to be out of the side. And, Barca start quite well, flashing a couple of early chances, daft chances, not great chances. Then United get the goal. and it's bad from Zambrotta. He actually wins a tackle, but then he steps inside and passes it straight to Paul Scholes in the edge of the box. Now, there are players you don't want to pass the ball to in the edge of the box. One of them is Paul Scholes, who he belts in a beauty. And it's 1-0. I always found it interesting. Remember Ferguson had said, if we get to the final, he's playing. Like, I guarantee him a place. Do you remember that? Yeah, I remember because the commentator mentions it. He's the only survivor from '99, and he's been guaranteed a place. He missed the final famously and whatnot. Then after that, for about 10 minutes, United are rampant. Old Trafford is nuts. It's, as you said, Martin, it's a special European night, and the atmosphere is, turned up to the max. But Barca weather it. Get back into it. Messi, good save, forces from the keeper. Half time, don't think the job is done as of yet. United have a couple of chances. Park should score. Actually, he misses one that he should really put away. And then towards the end, Barca are just chucking everything at it. Henry comes on, Bojan comes on, but United are resolute, and they're so hard working. They're chasing everything down. They're blocking spaces. And in the end, you're absolutely right. This is a side who don't feel the need to shoot themselves in the foot anymore by doing silly things. They capitalise on an error and they get themselves through that way. I didn't think going into this United would keep 2 clean sheets.
Yeah.
And that is a testament. United of the 90s did not do that. They were not capable of that. They would attack and they would have scored more than one over 2 matches. But this was not the way they played. This is a new United. This is a different United. There is something nice about Scholes being the guy who scores a goal, because of what I've just mentioned, that sentimentality there. And what a goal. But great assist from Zambrotta, though, isn't it? I mean,
right on his path. Yeah.
Right. He doesn't even need to break stride. The last guy you pass it to. But Barca are... they are impressive at times in this match, but they can't force the goal. And again, it's funny when people think of classic United. I'm going to say something controversial here, and I don't care, and don't at me, as I believe the kids say for when they say something that you might think is daft. Edwin van der Sar was better than Peter Schmeichel. There, I said it. Yeah,
no argument here. It was one of those, I guess, if you're involved, if you're a United fan, and a Barcelona fan for that matter, it is classic European football. It's everything a European knockout game should be, which is torture, because it is on that knife edge all night, especially with such an attacking team like Barcelona. But Adam, you mentioned, I think in the last show, or maybe the show before that, about United's work rate, and it is that gets them through, that sees them through. I think that second half. And it's a work rate that probably isn't there post-treble. That even though they were winning titles and they were winning this and winning that, it probably wasn't as disciplined, and you had more willing lieutenants. But, I think you've got that in Park and Hargreaves, and Anderson's the kind of money, right? That's what spent, and Nani, I think it was part of the same deal, wasn't it? Well, 30 million quid or something over that summer. But everyone's just putting themselves on the line, and that it's what's been needed at United maybe for a few years.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I think there's missteps in the market still as there were before, but he's doesn't quite go to the extremes that he does a few years later in terms of wringing every last drop out of players that are below par. I feel like the later years is very much a team that is miles better than the sum of its parts. At this stage, that's not true at all, but there are elements of that, finding roles for players in games that excel. As David said, coming into this game without an away goal, particularly when you've missed a penalty and feel like you still have another, without Rooney, without Vidic, who was ridiculous. I mean, the defence that season had one of the best Premier League records ever. I think it was 21 goals conceded, and they were also available as well. I think that they hardly missed 5 games each in that season. And it's mad how much that helps a team. I think we all know that. We all see that teams that chop and change so much. That familiarity just isn't there. So I think that all helps. But yeah, you just need that character. You need the players playing their role. Park Ji-sung, you mentioned, we've spoken about him a couple of times. Fantastic. Even Paul Scholes kind of come on and talk to, because he's kind of going through it. If there was 3 great Man United teams, I think there's 3 iterations of Paul Scholes as well in his career. It doesn't quite match up to all of those. That sort of 99.
Let's have a wee look at Scholes then, Adam, because we've been doing this show for so long. We've talked about so many great players. I don't think we've really spent a lot of time on one of the most consistent performers who's been in the Champions League, I think, since 94, 95, probably.
Yeah, I think so.
Maybe even 93,
94.
So what's your thoughts on his evolution as a player?
So I probably, I don't know, maybe I'm speaking out of turn here, but I certainly feel like most people underrated him purely because of the international sense when he would get shuttled out to that side to make way for Gerrard and Lampard, and then it became a bit of a meme or a cliche of, was he actually better than one or both of them, and he was shuttled out the way. That's not really the show to dig into that. But for me, I loved him. I thought he was very English in that sort of mid-90s, arriving into the box, scoring those goals. I know he scores a belter here from distance, which hits the side of the high up in the side netting. But that was becoming less and less, I think, at this point, certainly for me. That football that he was in the 90s, he was evolving here, I think, at this point. I think in part that's probably when Van Nistelrooy comes in and he maybe doesn't need to get forward as much. The midfield is becoming much more of a battleground. They need that extra body in there as you get into the sort of 2003, 2004-ish. I think his passing range really starts to come to the fore more. At this point, he creates, he works for the team, he can position himself better tactically, he works for the team. We've mentioned that off the ball piece that you need to have now. I think at this point, this is him at the end of what I would class as that cycle. And then I would say moving into the end of this decade and into his sort of latter years, I think he then becomes further back and he starts to move to that deeper playmaker piece, if you like. We've seen it before. Players get a little bit older, you lose that yard, you move back a little bit. But I think if you think of those 3 positions in a central midfield, that sort of box-to-box 8 / number 10, if you like, of a kind of Lampard level, he did that in the early stages of his career. Kind of more of a creative number 8 of a kind of Xavi piece. He could do that as well, and then further on, he sits as that kind of deeper midfielder. The relationship with Michael Carrick works really well, and I think it's an interesting comparison to Arsenal. We're talking about a lack of physicality, maybe killing them. Scholes and Carrick are slight. Carrick can use his body well, and he is physical in that sense, but they're 2 ball players, if you like, but very rarely would see them getting overrun in the middle.
Yeah, exactly, but they're stronger. Carragher was a big guy, still is, but there was strength in there. The only thing about Paul Scholes is, I mean, I think now, classic era Pep would have adored Paul Scholes, but he would have banned him from ever leaving his feet in a tackle.
Yeah, definitely. He was not one for that.
He was not renowned for that, but he's just a brilliant footballer, wasn't he? His passing range was fantastic. He moved the ball quickly, and he was always available. I mean, teammates, I don't think it's coincidence that teammates speak so warmly about him, because if you were ever up a cul-de-sac, he was there, and he was there to receive the ball. And of course, his highlights reel goal-wise is up there with anybody's.
So that is United through to the final in Moscow. And David, it looks, if you're into these things, if you're into fate and destiny and written in the stars, which we know is bullshit, because we've just done Arsenal and Paris, but Roman Abramovich is heading towards Moscow as well. Of course, that would be where he would finally win that Champions League, isn't it? Standing in the way were Liverpool. again. I'm going to suggest, a few things for the reasons or as to why this game or this tie is very, very different from the previous ones. First leg 1-1, okay, fair enough. That looks in keeping. Chelsea getting a very, very late equaliser.
What a goal. What a header. John Arne Riise, quite... Yeah, we talk about body language, but Malouda puts in a cross, and it's a good cross. It's in an area, but I've never seen body language that's quite so clear of a man saying, do I do this? Do I do that? Do I do this? Do I do that? And then doing none of the things that I'm sure he was thinking about and bulleting a header past the keeper in the 94th minute. How different would it have been if Liverpool had won again? Would Chelsea have been going, these bastards, they always do it, doesn't matter how we're doing. But no, it flips the whole script, that one moment. Just how crucial was that?
And then 1-1 at the bridge, and then extra time, it really does go into lift off. Those goals aplenty. It ends up 3-2 to Chelsea after extra time. Drogba with a couple, one in normal time, one in extra time, and Lampard in between. Ryan Babel yet again.
What a goal, by the way.
Getting a goal, but it's too late to do anything.
Keeper. He must be 30 yards minimum out when he hits it. I mean, it's a stunner, but of course you don't remember it because it's consolation.
But how important is the fact that the second leg is not at Anfield?
Yeah, it's huge. It's massive. As I say, there are turning points in this game. 94th minute goal. Psychologically, because they don't now need to go to Anfield and face that. But I do wonder if Liverpool had that 1-0 and the away goals thing, but also just the psychology of it's that team, the team that always seem to deny you. Doesn't matter how you're both doing in the league, this mob always seem to have the upper hand on you in this competition. Well, that goes out the window. This is actually a really good game. The second one, Drogba, I loved this Drogba. See, Drogba from about 2008 to 2013, 14, I just adored because he had everything. That's my type of striker. I know Adam likes all his wee kind of number 10s that aren't really number 9s and can play on the wing and all that shite. Give me a massive guy who terrorises defenders and can score all types of goals. He was sensational that night. But Liverpool are good. Liverpool have belief they're in it. There's a sizable away support behind the goal as well, which makes
has to be because of Europe.
Europa, that's right. And the atmosphere is incredible. There is something to be said for two sides who really do not like each other, and this is that. Lampard's mother had just passed away, I think, and he's playing with emotion. You see that, and some of their games had been a little nervy. It's probably the word, cagey, because these were two good sides and the stakes were so high. There's something in this one that's different. Maybe it is where it is. Well, maybe it's the fact that it's gone a little differently, but it's an absorbing 120 minutes of football. And interestingly, I'm usually of the belief that I'm a big scrap extra time guy. I think the vast majority of it is pointless because teams they're usually tired and they go, right, we're no losing. This isn't that. They both go for it and try to get it done before penalties. And Chelsea ease past them. And I will hold my hands up and say I thought their name is on this. With everything that season had been, the chaos, the fact that they've got, Baron von Green back from Danger Mouse as their manager, and it's quite clear the players, don't give a toss about them. But they looked aside on a mission, and they finally got the better of Liverpool. Their Achilles heel in this competition, their kryptonite, they finally done it, got the better of them. But can I just go back and watch the extended highlights of this? If nothing else, check out the Babel goal. It's a stunner.
Adam, I love Didier Drogba, and I think David's right. I think this is a new phase. His goals are short range, but he doesn't fanny about. And I think that first one, he could have controlled it, try to step inside, do something, but it's just, the ball's spilled out. Boom, Chelsea are ahead. He just became this force of nature. And again, we talked about this committee basically running the team, but there is a bit more fun in life about Chelsea. And is that probably natural after the controller, the minute detail, the guy who's just an obsessive? They still love him, but clearly that relationship had frayed a wee bit with certain players, that they felt a bit of freedom of expression that still might have tried to be controlled on that night if Mourinho was still about.
Yeah, I think we always talk about the big players in there, but as we mentioned a couple of shows ago, Mourinho wouldn't think twice about saying one thing to one person and another thing to another person. So while it galvanizes for a while, it can only galvanize so many people before it starts to get before you start to run out of people to galvanize, essentially. So I don't know if Mourinho wasn't as abrasive. I think you mentioned a kind of similar scenario earlier on. Would they have managed to get as much out of them? But it's not designed for long term success, which is a shame. But yeah, I don't doubt that a slight calmness would help. We see it a few years later again when there's a change of pace for Chelsea, and they go on and be very successful in this same competition. So yeah, I think that probably was one of those. Also, again, as Rangers fans, we've seen that as well. We're involved in a competition we're doing well in, and maybe a couple of others that we're not doing well in, and we just sort of go almost free hit territory, if you like, or just carefree a little bit in a certain one. But yeah, I love Drogba. I thought he was outstanding. That stat, is it 10 goals in 10 finals? I think if the Ibrahimovic titles stat sums him up, I think that stat probably sums Drogba up when you need him. He is there. And yeah, I think that Babel shot is a really good shot. There's a load of long range goals in this year that are good. There's a lot of goals that hit in the top corners and things as well, which I like to see. So yeah, on to the final.
But this is against a half decent keeper, as we've discussed on here before. Some of the keepers look as though they won competitions to be in. Yeah. What I'll say about Drogba is he kind of flips it as well, that he becomes Jamie Carragher kryptonite, and will over the next few years give him some savage doings.
Yeah, he won't be the only one. Okay, so an All England final in Moscow then. Again, like, as I said, Wenger in Paris, just this constant narrative about it being Chelsea's turn. Let's talk about this Chelsea team then, Adam. Let's talk about the teams and how they kind of lined up and how they took the shape. How different is this really? I know we've kind of joked about it, we've touched on it. The Chelsea side that turns up on that night in Moscow, how different is that to a Jose Mourinho side, for example?
Yeah, I guess there's a bit more freedom in there, if you want to call it that. But they do some things that you wouldn't expect here. So obviously they've got Essien at right back, which takes Essien away from central midfield, which was a key component of Jose Mourinho, as we know. The approach by Ballack and Lampard, so they, for large parts of this game, are more focused on stopping Scholes and Carrick getting the ball from what I could see, which, again, thinking about the opposition isn't exactly a change of pace from Jose Mourinho, but the players that are doing it maybe wouldn't have been the best shout in there. I think the front three roles, etc., is pretty standard for a Jose Mourinho team, with Malouda one side, cutting in Joe Cole, and then Didier Drogba up top. So yeah, I think there's just a little bits and pieces there. There is an element of let's just leave Makelele in there and see what happens, but with all that rotation and that we've mentioned with Man United, who start with Tevez and Rooney nominally as the front two, I think that maybe causes a bit of an issue. I think the big factor in this game for me was Ronaldo, but not just because he scores that goal, but I think the positioning where he plays him, he starts on the left with Evra, and they get so much joy down that side, and kind of makes sense. I guess they match it up really well. Essien playing there as a right back. Fair enough, he's done it before, but he's certainly not a better right back than Ashley Cole as a left back, if that makes sense. So putting Ronaldo on that other side, to me, seems really sensible. You've then got Owen Hargreaves on the right hand side, who can perform that man marking defensive role, if you like, on Ashley Cole. So that seems like a really shrewd move from Ferguson. Evra and Ronaldo get a lot of joy down that left hand side. Joe Cole not exactly the most diligent tracking back, and Essien that we've mentioned. So there's a lot of combinations down that left hand side. Tevez dropping in, overloading down there, and I think that's the big factor. I would say certainly early on is that sort of setup with Ballack and Lampard marking, trying to mark Scholes and Carrick. Makelele kind of just dealing with whatever comes his way in there, and then what I think is a mismatch on that left hand side of United's attack, right hand side of Chelsea's, that I think United get a lot of joy from.
And the United side, David, again, pretty much as one would expect, I guess. I do wonder if these are the two strongest sides. Wes Brown playing at right back. Neville's still kicking about then, is he not?
Yeah, he is. But, Ferguson, I think, had made clear by this stage, with this iteration of United, that it was very much what is the most effective side on the night, on the occasion, for the side that we're coming up against. This is a highly tactical match, far more tactical than a match between two English clubs, even a decade before would have been, even in Europe. These are sides that are very well drilled. And you're right. I think that he was very good at the non-superstar players, because this is a team that's packed full of quality, and we've discussed them at length throughout this season. But there are a lot of less glamorous, more workhorses who he would deploy in different places. It wasn't just a case that they got brought in for standard jobs. And we've spoken before about the type of player who is willing to do that, to take on a role that is needing specifically done. And the famous one, the one who's become emblematic of it in this, is Park. That he's the one that people, when they're searching for someone to demonstrate that, they pull him out. But there are other guys, as you mentioned, like Wes Brown, that will come in and will be assigned a specific task for the specific opponent throughout this run and do it. And it's a huge part, Martin, of United's consistent success in this tournament over the next few seasons, because, okay, there's this year, as we know, and they don't round it off in other years because they happen to run into what might well be the greatest club side ever. But they show a consistent ability to, and Ferguson shows a consistent ability later in his career that maybe wasn't always there, maybe wasn't always so needed earlier on, or you could argue, I suppose, that 9 years between European Cup finals that it was needed and he didn't demonstrate it. And it is Queiroz influence. We know this. It's Queiroz with the game plan. This is what we're going to do. But I think there's a healthy respect for Chelsea. And as you say, that means that certain players are getting picked. He mentioned before it that the only one who was guaranteed to start was Paul Scholes. I think we all realised that there were certain others that were pretty much guaranteed. But this United lineup is a mixture of real superstar talent, yes, but plenty of people who will be deployed in whatever the manager needs them to do on the specific occasion on that night. And it is a great strength that United sides didn't always have.
This is the season that Gary Neville has the ankle injuries. Martin, so he doesn't play at all. Wes Brown plays pretty much every game. I think this he does really well. As good as the Neville Ronaldo kind of combination would be. I think Brown can do most of that as well, but maybe offers a bit more physicality. So I think that's a pretty good combination usually, but like we said, he flips it up on this side and goes Brown and Hargreaves on one side to deal with Ashley Cole and Malouda, and then the others on the other side.
Yeah, I know Rob Smythe, a huge admirer of what Wes Brown had managed to do in that semi-final against Barcelona, and very much an advocate that it was the defence that won United this Champions League and not the attack.
Yeah.
But yeah, a bit of both, I'm sure. Game itself, it felt a wee bit different from a Premier League game. I think it's probably a little less harem-scarum, but I think big Premier League games are entering into an era where this, Adam, is becoming a wee bit more the norm. Less 3-2s and 5-4s and also, we're going to, when the Premier League clubs stop appearing in Champions League finals for a long time, that's when you start getting these Super Sunday goal fest back. I think quite a lot of Premier League games were quite tight and tactical affairs, and there was a bit of kickback, I think, at the time that Super Sundays, they should be taken to the Trades Description Act, because it's not basically what's been advertised here. But that's why Premier League teams are going to be at this stage, semi-final stage, so often, because they're just more pragmatic than perhaps before, when they were getting their pants pulled down on a regular basis.
Definitely. And I think you see the balance here that we mentioned in certainly the Man United balance when you think of how he's approaching things. We've mentioned there maybe a little bit more gung-ho in certain games, or potentially in some Premier League games where they're comfortably the better team. But in these games, there's the utmost respect is shown, but not in a overly negative way. I think the point that was made earlier on in the season about, yes, 100% counter-attacking team, but this is not backs to the wall defending and then launching balls for strikers or forwards to go and chase. This is solid defending, soaking up pressure, letting teams get a foothold in the game, and then using those attackers, in my mind, to create opportunities. And I think that's fair. The goal, for me, I guess, typifies the choices that Ferguson made in this game. I mentioned Ronaldo starting off the left. I don't know, can't remember how many times he started off the left on that side. I would wager him starting on the left and Hargreaves on the right was not common. So that would be, I think everybody expected Park Ji-sung would play. So that would be a big thing. But the goal comes from a throw in at that side. Wes Brown and Paul Scholes work it to the edge of the box. Wes Brown cuts in on his left foot and delivers a great ball to Ronaldo coming in from the left this time to header. Again, that mismatch with Michael Essien in the air sums up what we've just said there. Just the Ferguson change, just making a difference in the key moment. It's everything for me that 99 almost wasn't in that sense, because we spoke before that he did make, for me, there were some errors in that game. There were a bit of flying by the seat of your pants at the end there, to say the least, and learning your lessons and going again and doing it in a way that is how you want to play, and the sort of type of manager, coach, team that you want to be. I think must have been really, really pleasing for them at that stage anyway, when Ronaldo scores yet another header. Yeah,
the two goals, David, we've kind of talked about these players so often over the past few weeks and months, actually. The two goals are so typical. This new typical Ronaldo, who used to laugh whenever he scored a header, now is just get these neck muscles that have
deadly
come from ancient Rome, and a stunning header. Well, not as powerful as Rome, but it has a glance, but still with power. But it's the leap, isn't it? It's the leverage. Yeah. And then, there's a speculative effort from Michael Essien, I think. Bit of a bobble, comes off two players. Who's there? Who's there? Always is Frank Lampard, and he was never missing. And again, just so typical of those two individuals.
Very much so. And I mean, the Ronaldo goal's superb. And as you say, Martin, the technique involved in it is huge. And he was just becoming, such a wonderful all-round player. And as Adam mentioned in the previous show, you couldn't have seen this cut. You knew he was tremendously talented, and even when he was young and having his struggles at United, when people would take the piss out of the random stepovers and stuff, he was still a very good player. But to become this sort of goal scoring machine with the range of finishes, the ability in the air, the poacher's instinct even as well, just getting to the right spot is something. But the Lampard goal, and you see how much it means to him. We mentioned, his mum had passed away, and I think there's a tear shed when he puts it away. But he was so great at that. He was absolutely superb at arriving, timing it right, and then that is only part of the equation. You need to be a good finisher to get the amount of goals that he got. It's great getting there, but we don't need to look too far at our own club to find someone who can get into those positions. But whether or not the ball ends up in the back of the net is random. That wasn't the case with Lampard. He was a terrific finisher. And of course, we say it all the time, but we're bang on half time at that goal. And it sets you up for a totally different second half. But I remember even by half time thinking that this is already, it feels epic. Like not because it's 4 each or whatever, but just because here were two heavyweights that were really slugging it out, and there was quality all over the pitch. And because of that, I love Michael Essien, for example, but he gets a bit of a chasing early on in this match from Cristiano Ronaldo. That's not something you saw happening often to Michael Essien. But he comes back because he's quality, and he comes back and he gets better throughout the match. And it was like that. There was these subplots all over the park on that occasion, and you did, even at half time, there was a sense of this could go all the way, because these are, how do you separate these two?
Penalty kicks, as it would turn out. Some decent penalties, Adam. Some nearly saves for Van der Sar. I think Lampard, especially, very reliable from the spot, but his just escapes in. I think Ashley Cole's might as well. Cristiano looks very stressed in that team line. He's up third, I think, and he stops and he stutters, and my heart is in my mouth if any of my players try that. It's clearly in two minds. He can't really be in two minds with Petr Cech. He's decent at that game, and he stops it. And John Terry is pumped up when you see his face on the team lines in the centre circle. It's him,
perfect, isn't it? It's John Terry,
Mr. Chelsea, captain, leader, legend in Moscow, the owner. And the thing is, it's quite a good penalty, actually. He slips, which forces it just that wee bit too wide, hits the post. If he doesn't, it's a perfect penalty. Van der Sar's the wrong way. He picks up the trophy. But there is it's pishing with rain, we must remember. But no one else has slipped. But it's so unfortunate.
It is. Penalty shootout. It does come down to luck, fortune, whatever you want to call it. There's points, I think, in there that either team, it could certainly went either way. Actually, Cole, for me, Van der Sar should be saving that.
Hargreaves,
the same with
Hargreaves.
The same with Nani, was it? Was similar. There was one. Was it Carrick who went before Ronaldo, or Hargreaves went after? It was a very good penalty right in the top left hand corner. I can't quite remember what one it was. And yeah, it is one of those things, and you see him running up. I remember watching this in my flat at the West End at the time on my little blue TV, and thinking, like you guys just said, they're absolutely meant to be for Abramovich, for Chelsea. The whole narrative of Mourinho not being there anymore, but then they do go on and win what they wanted to win anyway. It just did all seem set up, and totally agree, it was spot on. Big credit to Anderson, who
follows straight up and turns that back,
because at that point, I know he gets the whole Ferguson treatment later on and becomes a kind of bustling defensive midfielder, but one of those young, wide South American players who comes and thinks, am I going to try and do what Ronaldo did and step up? No, I'm just going to absolutely scud it, and it goes in. And I think that's the key moment, I think, for me. When you've then got Ryan Giggs coming up, there's no chance he's missing it at all. So it then becomes that sudden death lottery. And I must admit, was a big fan of Nicolas Anelka at Arsenal. Did not really want him to leave to go to Real Madrid, who, as we all know, are a club that are very much on my shit list. And when he stepped up, I just thought, yeah, he's probably not doing this. I don't think I just had it in my head, and I'm not sure he even really thought he was doing it.
Convinced he would miss, and shall I tell you for why?
Because some strikers don't like dead balls, and some strikers love running onto things a million miles an hour.
Well, yes, there's that, right? But also an insight into his character. Do you remember when Rangers took on Paris Saint-Germain in 2001?
I do.
And when it went to penalties, Nicolas Anelka, who was running about absolutely fine, chasing a last-minute winner seconds before, immediately ran to the dugout, developed a limp, and struck an ice pack on his leg and took his boots off. And I thought, well, he's not hitting a penalty. And he's not put his hand up to go up in the front five. So he is exactly what Martin said. He doesn't want to hit one, right? So he had previous for it. It's interesting, though. I think if you ask people about this final, who missed the penalty, they say Terry, don't they? Quite a lot of the time. Anelka's miss has sort of been erased. It's become such a famous thing. And Chelsea, you know, they hit the woodwork twice. It's so close to winning this in normal through the game. I mean, they might have done it. It just rather than it was meant to be, it actually turns out to be quite the opposite. And then, of course, there's the scene that United players, bar one, all rush off to celebrate.
Well,
but
is that not foretelling the era that's about to come?
Yes, Cristiano goes down on his knees in tears, which means, of course, the cameras, rather than following the guys all running, as is traditional in European finals after penalty shootout, the cameras immediately cut to Ronaldo, and it's him who fills up the screen and fills up the big screen in the stadium. And you're absolutely right. A more perfect image for what football is going to become could not have been drawn. Teams are we celebrating, but the individual, the superstar, is the one who's picked out.
Worth remembering that when we get into the middle of May, both of these teams could do the League and Champions League double. I mean, United won the league on the last day, just 10 days or so before Moscow. So it is part of not quite the most romantic kind of narrative in terms of contest, but it's in that story nonetheless. But it's Ferguson's return, Adam. I mean, not many people saw this coming when Mourinho arrived, and it looked like he kind of had his time, and maybe Glasgow, that fated Hampden final in 2002 was supposed to be his thing, and here he is.
He is, and I mean, it's different. I was going to say, like, let's not pretend it's a rags to riches type thing. It's not as turbocharged as Chelsea, but I remember the articles coming out before the game about how both clubs were almost £1 billion in debt each, or whatever it was. It was the 1.6 billion between them, or something. And in a sense, that is, I guess, where they've got to. United's does feel, like I said, a little bit more organic because they've built the team up and this and that debt is not debt that they've spent on players or anything like that, whereas the Chelsea side has been a bit more artificially inflated. But yeah, that's just a sign of where football was going. We mentioned a few years back about moving into the age of the owner, and I think these two probably sum it up. You can imagine Arsene Wenger sitting at home shaking his head at it in terms of the excess. But full credit to Ferguson. Like I said, for me, I enjoyed this one more. Watching it, I just felt I loved that team of '99. I thought that they summed up the '90s. They were very '90s, very part of me growing up. But in terms of, I guess, becoming a modern league club team, and how they played in these games, I thought they were a really, really nice balance between that solid defence. We're not even really spoken about Ferdinand and Vidic, but both of them together were absolutely incredible that season. Van der Sar right up there as well, like you said, definitely for me better than Schmeichel over the piece. Just a nice balance everywhere, and extreme firepower up top as we've touched on, and a player who we will certainly be fed up talking about over the next couple of months right up top. But yeah, very very worthy winners, I think, overall for me. And yeah, just shows where the English dominance is at this time.
Indeed it does. But there are things changing in Europe, especially in Milan and Barcelona, the managerial front, and I'm looking forward to what's going to happen next season. I actually prefer the United team of next year, but don't tell anyone. David, thank you so much.
Pleasure. Thanks, guys.
Cheers, Adam.
Thank you.
And until next time, bye for now. If you enjoyed the show and want to help us grow, please remember to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. On YouTube, search for And It's Live Podcast. We've got new deep dives, drafts, and breakdowns dropping every other day.